Hi all. In celebration of the upcoming World Championship match very shortly next month between Magnus Carlsen and Viswanathan Anand, let's have a look at another classic past encounter. This was in the Corus 2008 tournament, Wijk and Z. Magnus Carlsen playing white, kicked off with e4. Viswanathan Anand chose the Sicilian defence, and we saw an open Sicilian. So after knight f6, knight c3, now we see a6, and we're going to get now after bishop e2, e6, what is known as Sicilian Scheveningen. It's this structure here which is very flexible in the centre. Often black is playing for either d5 or e5 at the right moment to liberate his game. Now in live book the most popular move is simply to castle here and not be too concerned with black playing b5, but Magnus chose a4, positional continuation. We see knight c6 and white castles kingside, bishop e7, it's all standard stuff so far. Bishop e3, black castles, f4, queen c7, the most popular move, and king h1, the most popular move, kind of prophylaxis against any problems on this diagonal when the king could be exposed. Rook e8 is the most popular move, bishop f3, it's all mainline at the moment. Now here, the most popular move is actually a very, very aggressive move actually. You might consider it aggressive, but it's the most popular move is to play g4, just slightly, 249 games in my live book. Queen d2, slightly less popular, but that was played by Magnus, 214 games. And now the main move usually played here is bishop d7, but Vichy actually played the less played bishop f8, and now we see queen f2, which sets up, you know, some ideas sometimes that b6 might be an issue sometimes. Vichy now played bishop d7, and we're coming to the end of most of the theory books, but the usual move here is rook ad1. On rook ad1, and let's put on the kibitzer here, very small game samples, but rook ad1 is preferred, and also from an engine point of view it's preferred. It sets up some ideas that actually e5 might be actually on the cards, with the idea of taking on c6 and then bishop b6. I just want to try and illustrate that. Say g6, just to illustrate it as an example, e5, taking, knight takes, bishop b6 is more dangerous because that rook is on that d file. Say queen e7, f takes. White has a very, very nice position here. In fact, the engines as white would mop up a human opponent tactically. Rook takes d5, e takes, knight takes d5, and we've got some exposure coming up on f7 here after bishop takes. This f file has a point that f7 is potentially how black's going to be dismantled via the f file, and in this position it starts to get very dangerous. This is just an engine variation as an example, but white's definitely doing very well with an option of bishop c5 coming up, and that's just an engine continuation. But it just shows actually that this move rook ad1 sets up at a very important threat here to make bishop b6 more effective. Magnus's move g4, it looks very, very aggressive as well, but now Vichy plays, I think this is a correct move here, e5. It looks like a classical recipe for handling a flank attack, is the counter attack in the center. Sometimes, you know, e5 weakens d5, but here it's a matter of precision timing. Is it exploitable, the d5 square? Magnus plays knight f5, and we have e takes f4, which gives black that e5 square to work with. Bishop takes f4. From an engine perspective, it's about equal here. Very sharp position though. We see what is white actually threatening. Potentially g5 is a very, very serious threat to play knight d5, so that knight d5 needs to be stopped. It will be with tempo on the queen, it will be a disaster. So basically bishop e6 is I think one of the necessary moves to play here against g5 and then knight d5 is not such a problem. Black could snap off the knight. So bishop e6 controlling that critical d5 square. We see rook ad1 and now knight e5. So shielding d6 a bit. It's a very nice knight, inviting white to take it off, which might be the best move because black is now threatening g4. It starts to be a bit loose. We can't really play a move like this. I believe it just looks a bit too slow. Something like queen c6 maybe, or even just playing on the queen side, or even just g6 here, and black should be okay. So Magnus gives up his dark square bishop with bishop takes e5. That was a very, very nice piece to take off. D takes e5, and now pursues a bit of d5 control with g5. So knight d7, and now does play actually the move knight d5. Possibly it's interesting that f7 from an engine point of view is still a target in this position, and you might not think, how on earth is f7 a target here? Well, the thing is, it's the only kind of semi-open attacking file near the proximity of the black king, and it's very, very intriguing that a move like bishop g4 might be significant. In fact, it sets up a neat threat of knight h6 check, and then taking here. If we give black a token move to illustrate this, just say rook c8 just to see the mechanism. Check. Now if king h8, knight takes f7. If taking here takes, and this could be very, very unpleasant for black. Just as an example, rook takes d7. So f7 is the way to tactically try and undermine black's position, and it's interesting that the move bishop g4 is an interesting attacking move here, but Magnus plays the more human move, just knight d5, inviting black to give up the light square bishop, but Vishy just tolerates the huge looking knight on d5. He just plays queen c6. This is, I think, better than bishop takes d5. If bishop takes d5, e takes, white now has other trump cards in the position. d6 could be a threat here, for example. Let's just see, say rook c8, d6. This position could be nice with that d pawn. In any case, just taking on b7 is nice here. So okay, in this position the knight was tolerated. Vishy played queen c6, and now Magnus drops back his bishop to g2. For the moment, chances are about equal. But technically black might be a tiny bit better technically, but it's a bit scary for king safety on the king side with this f file. Rook bc8 though, looking at these both of these pawns now, if black is materialistic, nabbing the a pawn instead, then white here has knight c7, and there's this dismantling effect on f7 again, taking out that defensive key piece. The e6 is very important here. For example, rook ed8, white can crash through with similar tactics to mention before. Knight takes e6, takes. Now actually not knight h6, nothing drastic needed here. Knight h4, and then coming to f7 is absolutely critical here. For example, bishop e7, check, king h8, taking the bishop. Okay, if black doesn't want to give up the bishop, let's just play a move like bishop c5 instead. Check, just to illustrate the dangers. Check, hg, rook d3 is mating. So this shows black's game can literally collapse with the f7 pawn as the cause of collapse on the king side. So black has to be very careful about this sort of thing, not to just nab this pawn and allow the loss of this key defensive piece for that f7 square. So that might explain the mystery why queen takes a4 was rejected. Vishy just wants the queens coming off with queen c5, much safer for his king, but surely. We see Magnus refuse that queen h4, and there looks to be very, very crude but very direct and critical threats of rook d3, and just switching the rook to h3 now. So how can black actually cope with this? Is it safe to take the c2 pawn here? Well, taking the c2 pawn does offer an advantage that it takes away the d3 square, and it is played. Queen takes c2 is played, stopping rook d3. It's a defensive move, it's not just materialistic. Magnus now plays rook c1. And now, okay, it looks a little bit on the greedy side as though black should be punished for this, but queen takes a4 is played here. And you might argue, well, hold on a sec, wasn't knight c7 critical to take away the bishop earlier? In this position it doesn't quite work, I think, because of this pin idea, but let's check it out. Knight c7. Now bishop takes f5 is possible, but it's not actually the best move, because white in this position can play b3, which makes this reasonably dangerous for white. If knight takes e8, bishop g6, and black is very nice there. But okay, so knight c7, there's actually a more critical idea that the rook just moves here, though. Taking on e6 is not such a big deal in this position. Rook takes c1, there's not enough attacking resources to back up things in this position. There's no problem at all with the king safety. So okay, the knight doesn't want to go to c7 here. We see instead b3, trying to get this critical tempo if the queen took to play rook c3, rook h3. Let's have a quick look at this. If queen takes b3, rook c3, the engine's suggesting actually black can try a queen sack here to avoid getting slaughtered with bishop takes d5. And I'm not sure this is very nice for a human to play, but potentially these pawns are pretty dangerous if white's attack's not getting anywhere and f7 is pretty solid. But that's not palatable usually for a human to do that sort of thing. If the queen moves back here, it would be slaughter time, of course, I believe, with rook h3. Bishop takes f5 using that pin. Does it actually work here? Well, there's rook takes f5. There's no annoying check or anything, and now black's just getting slaughtered surely. If h6 takes, trying to close the lines, check, but rook takes f7, and now white is threatening all sorts of things. We just rook g3, taking here for taking there, and this is starting to get very, very critical, this kind of position. If rook d6, queen g5, white's significantly better. The attack seems to be raging on. In fact, this sort of plan might be evident now. So let's go back. So when offered this pawn as bait to gain the tempo for the attack, Vishy just refuses. Queen a5. So it looks a little bit to a play like a computer, mopping up a couple of pawns, but he's not that materialistic. Queen a5 does put a bit of pressure on the centre now, but now we see this critical rook shift along the third rank. So how can this be defended? It starts to look very, very scary. g6 is chosen, and it's not just about attacking the knight, which doesn't really have to go anywhere. It's about being able to play h5, because the pawn is sporting h5, inviting white to close up the lines. So we see rook h3, and now h5 is the only move. And here, you know, Magnus is playing like a real attacking player, like Tau style, or Morphe style. It looks a far cry from most of his games in recent encounters, as far as 2013 is concerned, with Viswanathan Anand. It's like hack attack style. He can play with these different hats, these different styles, depending on opponent usually. But here he's really playing like a hacker. He plays bishop f3. And he's really just threatening bishop takes h5 and just tearing open that h-file to mate black on either h7 or h8. Vishy now plays in this position to try and cope with this. Played bishop takes d5, and the Indians actually don't like this. There's actually a more precise move apparently in queen b5 here, distracting white for a moment. Let's say rook g1, then bishop takes d5, and this is looking really complex position tactically. What is actually going on here? which nullifies white's attack. Let's just test this out. If bishop takes h5, black can just take, of course, because e4 is overloaded. We just play bishop takes e4 check here, and you know, if rook g2, queen f1, that's the end of white. So this starts to look end of white here after queen e2. There's no attack. The attack's too slow. So queen b5 looks to be a very annoying move in this position, surprisingly annoying. If rook e1, bishop takes d5 here, and again if e takes d, let's go with that. G takes f, queen takes h5, but black has bishop g7. And again, this attack from white doesn't look that dangerous here in this position, because that annoying queen b5 has knocked out the rook. That would have been more dangerous for f7. This isn't the case now. So queen b5 might actually have been a very, very critical move in this position after bishop f3 to react with queen b5, a forcing move. But instead we see, okay, a different forcing move, bishop takes d5, and apparently white's technically back in the game after this at move 28, move 29 now. Magnus plays e takes d5, so he wants to still play bishop takes h5 and break down that h file. And again, queen b5 might be useful for black, but bishop g7 is played. Bishop takes h5, and it starts to get very, very scary now for black's king safety. G takes f5, and now finally that f7 is celebrated. Bishop takes f7 check, king takes f7, and now g6 check, which stops, of course, the king going away for a moment. King dare not take on g6, it will just be slaughter time, or just getting mated in 6 with check. And rook takes g7 check is end of black. Black's going to be ending here, getting mated. So this pawn has to be kept after g6, and it looks very frightening now after king g8. So Magnus 2 pieces down here, and the engines suggest in this position that white with a precise move should draw this. Technically, this would technically be a draw. d5 is hanging here, by the way, and that's with check. So this move might seem a little bit surprising, but the engine suggests rook takes f5 is drawing here. For example, queen takes d5 check, rook hf3. So white's threatening now mate in 1. So black now plays to survive this. Queen takes f3. That has to be played here, because if knight f8, then white has rook takes f8 check, and then mating on h7 again. If either takes on f8, we mate on h7, because that last rook is covering the f8 square and stopping king takes f8. So here black actually has to sack the queen with queen takes f3, rook takes, and now knight f8. Apparently this is an equal position. Black has ample material in theory for the queen, the 2 rooks against the queen, and knight and bishop against the rook. But apparently this sort of play should be about equal, because at minimum white's getting a kind of perpetual check with something like rook takes f4, just as an example. There's once the pawn is established on g6, it's check time, not there mating on f7. So we like perpetual check with these perpetual checks. But if we go back to the critical position now, Magnus played perhaps the more ambitious move. He played queen h7 check. After king f8, rook takes f5, which looks, to be running with checks to not allow queen takes d5, which would seem anti-intuitive. This looks more logical, but black is for the moment still 2 pieces up. Now 1 piece up still. And in this critical position, I think this was the best move, by the way. Let's just assume it's one of the best moves anyway. It's not far off. Just taking on g7 looks absolutely, you want to do that to carry on the attack. d5 is still attacked though here. And in this position, remarkably, cool as a cucumber, Viswanathan Anand didn't play what maybe many of us would consider King D8. Instead he plays very, very strong, apparently King D6, much stronger. It seems that on King D8, White might actually be, well, holds the D5 pawn, which is one thing, with Queen F7. And this might be a little bit tricky for Black if it's played wrong. It also supports Rook F1 check, so say Queen E1, Rook F1, check, King G1. Okay, these checks are annoying, but here there's some chances for White. For example, check G7, and White's now threatening Rook H6 check. So this sort of position, even though Black's a piece up, is a bit tricky. White can play like this and maybe get back the piece. This is just an example variation. So it could have been a bit trickier on King D8 because of Queen F7, but we see actually the move King D6, and technically White's not doing very well here. So what is the reason for this? Well, there's no immediate killer check, and also the king is helping attack D5, so there's no Queen F7 here, because surely Queen takes D5 check is a powerful move. I believe it is a very, very powerful move, and that just takes off the queens, and Black's doing very, very well here. This pawn can be stopped, not with that, with Rook G8. So actually King D6 was a remarkably powerful, cool as a cucumber move instead of King D8. Now, you know, D5 is falling, and we see Rook F7, and Queen takes D5 falls with check, King G1. And Vichy is basically a knight up. The attack is running out of steam here. There are ways to go wrong though. Clearly, if the knight moves here, for example, I think maybe even Black should be okay here actually. Check, check. Check Rook E6, pardon me. And apparently White's okay. So maybe there are a few moves which don't immediately lose. Yeah, Black's a piece up here. So Rook Bd8 is played, just protecting the knight. So White is a piece down. The attack's run out of steam. We see Rook H7. Vichy plays check. After King G2, check here to protect the knight. It's got two pieces protecting as well as the king. King H1. And now the brutal move is played. Absolutely finishes White really. It's Rook G8. And this is now hopeless for White. If Rook takes D7, for example, Queen takes D7, and that's end of game basically. White's just a rook down. So this is actually really, really bad. This position now. Magnus tried on move 41, Rook F6 check. I think that's the last sort of cheapo possible. If Knight takes F6. Even here, Queen C7 is not actually winning though. Apparently, you know, Queen C, if that's the best move, getting the queens off, then that's not good. White's not even winning this position, so that could even be taken. But instead, we see the more cautious looking King C7, Queen E7, and now Queen E4 check, and the attack is now on the White king on King G1. Magnus just resigned here. If he moved the king, then Rook takes G6 check, and if the rooks don't come off, then it's trouble for White. So mating 10 for White actually here. Say check, check, check. White's king is really in trouble now. Check, 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 check. Just for the record, Rook F8 check. Check. That was the forced mating sequence. But yeah, it's all gone wrong. The attack's all gone wrong here from quite earlier, from being a piece down. Magnus's critical moments here just to secure the draw was the counterintuitive, allowing queen takes d5 was to actually play rook takes f5 apparently. So sometimes just calculation in chess just overrides anything else. To find rook takes f5 though, to allow the apparently scary. I mean, it does threaten queen h7, but this was an absolutely critical continuation where black's doing this kind of queen sacrifice. I don't know if Magnus had really seen this. It's remarkable that he considers this position and not going for it because of this queen sacrifice potentially. There's another option of playing a check here and then sacking the queen again, but it still results in this queen sacrifice. That's the only way to defend queen h7. Then knight f8, and that knight is just in time defending the diagonals here. It's a very, very critical continuation. So that's very interesting. That really it could have bailed out in this game with a draw, but it required good calculation at this very, very critical moment. This is approaching the move 40 time control, which is usually when more time is given to players. So a very, very exciting encounter between these two in 2008. Unbelievably exciting, sharp encounter. In the end, Magnus actually came ahead though of Vichy despite losing this particular game, and shared first with Levon Aronian, but lost on tiebreak to Levon. So Levon was actually declared the winner of Corus A that year in 2008. Comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.